In 2023 alone, there were almost 2 million people who performed Hajj. And when you add that with the daily visitors and the people doing Umrah, the numbers get even crazier. But what I want you to know is that this all started with two weak people with no army, no power, no home, in the middle of a soulless desert with no direction of where they're headed in life. Once upon a time, there was a man named Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Ibrahim alayhi salam was gifted by his first wife, Sarah, his second wife, Hajar. And this was so that they could bear children because Sarah felt bad that Ibrahim at his age did not have any kids. And so from Ibrahim and Hajar came Ismail alayhi salam. And can you imagine Ibrahim's new wife and his first newborn, and he's over 80, 90 years old. And Allah is commanding him to take these two to the middle of the desert, which is completely deserted in terms of the plants, people, water. Take them in the middle of the desert, leave them there with no context, without saying a word, and just walk away. I want you to just imagine doing this to your family. Now, obviously, anyone in the right mind is going to question, what on earth are you doing? Where are you going? And so Hajar alayhi salam said, Ibrahim, ila man tatrukana? Who are you abandoning us to? What out there is so important that you are going to them and leaving us here? Why are you doing this? And obviously, she's not saying it as calm as I am right now, because, really, she should be freaking out. But as she repeated the question and got no answer, and Ibrahim just kept walking, she eventually realized something. She asked him, Allahu amaraka bihada? And then he replied with one word. He said, Na'am. He said, Ajal, yes. And this scene is so tough because imagine like a movie shot where Ibrahim alayhi salam is just walking away. And being the incredible father he is and the incredible prophet that he is, you know how much he's hurting on the inside. That this is his first newborn at over 80, over 90. And as he's walking away, you can see all of the emotion that he's trying to suppress inside of him because he's trying to obey Allah's commands. And that makes it even harder when your wife is questioning and saying, don't leave us and don't leave me and my kid. And so Ibrahim alayhi salam, he doesn't want to reply because the moment he replies and turns back, he's going to start getting to his emotional side. The story goes that Hajar and Ismail were alone in the desert and they understand that this is for the sake of Allah. And that's why Hajar says, إِذَنْ لَا يُضَيِّعُنَ اللَّهِ. Then Allah will not lose us. Allah will not abandon us. And so Hajar starts to move between two hills called Safa and Marwa. And in between these two hills is this ditch. And every time she would reach this ditch, she would have to run because she could not see where she put Ismail from this point. So she would run until she gets up and she would start to look, can I see people, can I see food, anything that can help us stay alive, because obviously the water is running out, the milk is running out, and the food's running out. And so she did this 7 times, from Safa to Marwa, until it reached 7 total times. And in the 7th time, she heard a noise in Ismail alayhi salam's direction. And so she went silent so she could listen. And then suddenly, water started to gush out from this region that Ismail alayhi salam was in. And this is what we know as Zamzam water. And subhanallah, until this day, it has not decreased in any way. It has not overflowed. It is perfect in its amount. And yes, the two I'm referring to when I say this all started with 2 people were Hajar and Ismail alayhim as-salam. And look up until that point where we have reached to now. But it wasn't all happiness and sunshine, because we know that in the early stages of the Prophet's life and way before that, that this place, Mecca, and inside and outside of the Kaaba was a place of idolatry. It was a place of paganism, and they would use this commercially as a business. They liked that this place was a center for many gods and many religions, and so they wanted to make money out of it. The point I want you to take away from this is that Mecca back then was so, in a sense, messed up, and it was so dangerous. And I think it can be, summarized with this one small event that happened in the Prophet's life, in which Abu Jahl was planning to kill the Prophet as he is prostrating in front of the Kaaba. So he would take a big rock and then plan to smash the Prophet's head as he is in sujood. How pathetic and cowardly is that, first of all? But he proceeded with the plan. Abu Jahl took the rock, and as the Prophet was in prostration, he was going to do it. I shouldn't be laughing at that. No sooner than he tried to do that, that he turned back, pale-faced, as if he just saw a ghost or something. Even though the Prophet had done nothing, the Prophet was still in his prayer. And Abu Jahl said that I saw this male camel with massive canines that was going to devour me if I got any closer. And later we know that that was Jibreel alayhi salam protecting the Prophet. Now I share this story with you just to show you the kind of danger that was in this place. From going to a point where you doing sujood peacefully in front of the Kaaba is going to get you killed, to a point where now we have millions of people a year doing this in peace. And despite everything that happened in Mecca, from the torturing to the killing, to them having to flee their homes, this was still the home of the Prophet. This was still the place which had the Kaaba inside of it, which Ibrahim and Ismail alayhim as-salam built. This was still the home of the Muhajirin, which are some of the best people on the planet after the prophets and messengers, if not the best. And so, even though they eventually went to Medina to build the first Islamic state, the long-term vision was truly to be able to go back to Mecca and free it from this ignorance that it's in, so they can actually pray in the direction of the Kaaba, with the Kaaba in front of them. And one of the most beautiful verses in the Quran is in the context of the Prophet constantly looking up at the sky. And the Prophet, it's as if he wants something. He wants something from Allah. But he's so shy to ask. It's like when you're not exactly in a problem, nothing bad has happened to you, but there is something that you would prefer so much over your current state, and you want that. Like your parents helping you in everything, but you just wish they did it differently, but you're just shy to ask them. And so Allah understands. Allah al-Alim, He understands what the Prophet wants. And so He reveals the verse, قَدْ نَرَى تَقَلُّبَ وَجْهِكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ فَلَنُوَلِّيَنَّكَ قِبَلَةً تَرْضَاهَا فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. At the time this verse was revealed, the Qibla was Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem. And Jerusalem, this is the third, the Masjid al-Aqsa is the third holiest place in the world. It's not that the Prophet doesn't like it or anything, but compare that to his home and to the Kaaba specifically, built by Ibrahim and Ismail alayhi salam. The Prophet deep down, he wanted to pray in the face of the Kaaba. He wanted the Kaaba to be the direction of prayer. That is how significant this place was to him. And subhanAllah, the Prophet didn't have to utter a single word. He made a dua with silence. And so Allah told him that we will give you a qibla in which you are pleased. So change your direction to Masjid al-Haram in Mecca. Perhaps you clicked on this video just so you could see my Umrah experience. And yes, now I'm going to be discussing that. In a sense, you might have felt this was a very long introduction. But it was very necessary because this is actually everything that was going through my head before the Umrah and leading up to the Umrah. The fact that this place that I'm going to is the place that Ibrahim and Ismail alayhim salam, they were in, they stepped foot here, they were building here. Hajar alayhi salam was running here. The seerah of the Prophet, all of those books which I read, the events, so many of them are happening in this land which I'm in right now. This Kaaba is the same one that I've been hearing about my whole life. This is no fairy tale. These are real stories. And so I had to repeat that to myself so many times so I can process it. Right? It sounds like the obvious, but you have to repeat it so you can process it and get affected by it. When you hear something so many times in your life, it just, you know that it's, for example, of course, the Kaaba is amazing, this is amazing, but you don't feel it. And that was what I was aiming to do with this background I just told you. What made Umrah specifically so special to me was that a few months before it was one of the worst, no, it was the worst time of my life. And simply for one reason, I was the farthest that I was from Allah. And that perfectly puts the verse into action when Allah says, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا. Right, that was perfectly being represented by me. And so I made huge sacrifices in that time and gave up all of those things which ruined my life. And then that reminded me of the hadith where the Prophet said that if you give up something for the sake of Allah, then Allah is going to give you something better. And that thing which was better, for sure it was many things, but one of them was the opportunity to go to Mecca, Medina, and do Umrah. And this timing was no coincidence. It made my, not just Iman, but my yaqeen a lot stronger that this hadith was perfectly put into action. And so when I reached and I see the Kaaba from a distance, I'm wearing my sunglasses and I'm with my parents and they don't know it, they can't see it, but I'm crying so much behind the sunglasses. And this was because of Surah Al-Duha, which was playing in my head the whole time. Surah Al-Duha was revealed at a time where the Prophet was not getting revelation and he thinks that Allah, is ignoring him or perhaps abandoning him because the Prophet did something bad, the Prophet, didn't deliver on his part. And so he tells him, ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى, and then ووجدك ضالا فهدى. This verse, ووجدك ضالا فهدى, I was living that verse. Every second of that tawaf, I was imagining where I was and where Allah put me now in a way I could have never imagined, And then I go to the sa'i between Safa and Marwa, and I can't imagine what Hajar alayhi salam went through to go from these two places without this luxury that we're in, the AC and the water, and running peacefully while she was doing this in the heat. Ibrahim alayhi salam, who was over 80, 90 years old, having to just leave his newborn son like that. It really made the experience a lot better. And I think this is the kind of mindset you should go with. A lot of people, they get excited, they want to go and they're excited to take a picture at the Kaaba, which yes, I did do that, as you can see in the thumbnail. But that should not be your main source of excitement. It really just should be to see the house of Allah and see what it is that the Prophet loved so much about it. Yeah, it was amazing. This is not directly related to the Umrah, but for me, the Umrah was a way for me to learn many things outside of the Umrah. And one of them really was just that Allah wants so much good for you. He wants so much good for you. Sometimes it just seems like all of the things which you love doing, suddenly you find out this is haram, this is haram, this is haram. But Allah somehow, through this domino effect, He brings you towards something better. With just a little bit of patience, He takes you towards something better which you could have not imagined. Something that surpasses, feeling happy just from a few release of hormones. And so we all know the benefits of the Umrah. You know, one of the best opportunities and places to ask for the forgiveness of Allah. Your sins are wiped out and your good deeds remain and they increase. And it's like you're a newborn, right? And it gives you this unreal boost of Iman. But for me, one of the main takeaways, which is like a long-lasting effect up until now, even if the Umrah I were to do like 5 years ago, the effect I would still have now, is imagining all of these stories which happened in that place. So that whenever I think of doing something that does not align with, the sake of Allah, doing anything or stressing over things, I just go back and remember those people and everything they had gone through. I could not go about their stories in detail, especially Ibrahim alayhi salam's story in detail. But when you think about them, read about them in the Quran, makes you realize that so much of what I worry about is so pointless, right? Although we should all try our hardest, it's that stuff which really matters. And I feel that in the same way that they were in a mission, that they were used by Allah to do so much great, that I want to be used in that way as well, as much as I possibly can. I will definitely not deliver like these people, but I hope that this video, for instance, was one step to delivering something important to people. I hope you guys benefited from the video, and I want to say that I ask Allah to give us all the opportunity to go back and do Umrah again, or for the first time if you haven't done it. I ask Allah to give us the opportunity to do Hajj, and I want to specifically thank my parents, whom Allah used them financially and physically to take me to the Umrah. I'm so grateful, and I'll see you guys inshallah next video. Assalamu alaikum.